amnesty.
I'm not interested in playing politics with border or immigration. I'm interested in fixing it.
President Biden gives a pass to 500,000 illegal immigrants. Could it actually help him in November? Getting ready, Trump previews the all-important debate during a rally in Wisconsin, how Trump might lose even before the debate starts. And Crimea River, Justin Timberlake busted for DUI, why celebrities risk jail to avoid Uber. Welcome to the Ferris Show on television. First tonight, one step closer to amnesty for everybody. Well, or for the 16.5 million people here illegally. President Biden today gave 550,000 people here in America illegally a free pass to stay. Call it whatever you want. It's a free pass to stay. And to be fair, there are some good reasons. Some came as kids through no fault of their own. Others are married to American citizens. Tearing families apart seems wrong, inhumane in a certain way. And let's face it, President Biden needs a win on anything, but especially on the border. On the issue of immigration alone, President Trump is surging in the polls. Biden led by 7 percentage points in 2020 on the issue. Trump is now up 11. I'm not a mathematician. That's an 18-point swing. And Biden's executive order could pay off politically across 8 pivotal swing states. If you get really close to your television, you can see there are hundreds of thousands of American citizens living with an undocumented immigrant. So in Arizona, for example, 134,000, the 2020 vote margin, 10,000. Wisconsin, 28,000, 20,000 vote margin. North Carolina, 95,000. In each one of these swing states, there are enough people living with an undocumented migrant to totally change the election. Totally change it. Here's the president making the political, not the policy, pitch.
When he calls immigrants, in his words, animals. When he was president, he separated families and children at the border. And now he's proposing to rip spouses and children from their families and homes and communities and place them in detention camps. He's actually saying these things. It's hard to believe it's being said, but he's actually saying these things out loud. And it's outrageous.
We're in crazy season right now. Donald Trump will say crazy and crazier things. Joe Biden will spin them to be even crazier and crazier. Kurt Bardell is actually nodding along to something I'm saying. But Americans, and scaring Americans about Trump right now, really is Biden's only hope. With us now, Scott Trainer, head of data science for Decision Desk HQ, and the man nodding along, Democratic strategist Kurt Bardella, also NewsNation contributor. This is what I can't figure out. Who was not already voting for Joe Biden, or a better way of putting it, who was going to vote for Donald Trump yesterday, and today saw Joe Biden offer this plan, this executive order, still could be challenged in court, and said, you know what, now I'm voting for Biden.
Well, maybe someone who right now is undocumented and therefore not eligible to vote, who because of this may now be able to vote and therefore will...
I don't think they can vote in this election under this.
Well, in that case, then no one. But I think it's about getting the base to turn out. Like after the executive orders talking about immigration enforcement that many on the left were unhappy about, this throws them a bone to kind of mollify them, give them a little, hey, look, I'm doing something that you guys should like. Keep the enthusiasm a little bit higher, because again, this election is going to be decided by who can get their side to turn out. If there is a drop in their base on either side, that's the ball game.
Is it really a base election, or is it who can convince swing voters that are upset about inflation and immigration and crime, Scott, to vote?
Well, if its turnout's less than 2020, it's a base election. 2020 was an extremely high turnout election. We don't expect it to be that high, so then it is, as you said, it's getting those small slices of voters to swing your way. Voters like independents, voters like suburban women, voters like Hispanic and African-American voters. All these are the contested segments that both campaigns are going after.
All right, so Geraldo was on with Elizabeth Vargas earlier about this issue about deporting groups of Americans. 63% of Americans say they want mass deportation of every illegal immigrant. 53% of Americans who are Hispanic agree with that. Here's Geraldo.
When the first group is rounded up and brought to a detention camp, then let's poll the American people on whether or not they think it's appropriate. When husbands are snatched from their family bedroom And the children are crying about daddy, who's been here for over 10 years and has worked in the community, is known, everyone knows Jose, he's this, he's that, he's our neighbor. Well, let's see if that ruthlessness, that harshness, that selfishness will sustain.
So there's a lot of emotion on this. I think he has a point when it comes to deporting a guy who's lived here for 15 years and is married to an American and has 2 kids and on and on. The flip side of that argument, right, is the Ecuadorian migrant charged with raping a 13-year-old. Christian Giovanni Inga Landi, 25, from Ecuador, charged with rape, sexual abuse, robbery, kidnapping, possession of a weapon, menacing, unlawful imprisonment. And not only that, was then chased down and beaten and detained by Good Samaritans. So what is a more powerful motivator, Scott, when we poll this? Is it fear of crime from these mass waves of undocumented, unknown military-age males, or the heartstrings of, to use Geraldo, Jose being deported?
Interestingly enough, it's both. And it is a timing thing, right? Like, we see crime linked with immigration, especially. Whether it's right or wrong is a different question. People are perceiving that to be linked, and crime is an issue that people perceive to be a top 5 issue. We can argue about the stats and whether it is or not, but this is what people perceive. As Geraldo pointed out, we saw this on Elian Gonzalez, 25, 30 years ago. There's a lot of people.
Were you even alive 25 or 30?
I'm a political nerd, man. I was watching that stuff. But
this was the kid who was brought from Cuba to the United States by one parent and then returned to Cuba.
And it was a critical issue in the 2000 election, and simply because of what side you're on and whether you deport him or bring him back. And as Geraldo pointed out, when you have those images, it does evoke. It evokes an emotion, and it may change people's minds. But those aren't the images right now. The images right now are the things about the crime and the economy and those types of things.
Right, and the women, the number of women who have been killed by illegal immigrants, Lake and Riley, Rachel Moran, others. Kurt, how does the president get a win on the border, not a sort of hold the line, I'm just going to start handing out freebies?
I don't think that there is a, quote, win, frankly, to be had politically for Biden or Democrats on the border. I think that this is more about trying to get as close to just net zero as possible so that it's not such a massive advantage for Republicans. Because the way that it currently is, that could be the difference in the election. But if they can just move the needle just ever so slightly to make it less of an advantage and then fight the fight on a train they feel better about politically, like abortion, women's rights, equality, et cetera, that's probably their best chance. If the election is about immigration or the border, Democrats are going to lose.
Right. If it's about that, and we see the polling, right? In 2020, Biden was +7 on this. That was kids in cages, or at least the reminiscence of kids in cages. The media certainly helped Democrats on that. Now Trump is +11. The images of crime and everything help. So, Scott, people tell us consistently that immigration is the number 1, number 2 issue for them, right? And it's become a proxy for all of these things. Donald Trump is +11 on immigration. What is the delta between how far, +7, how far he is up on, quote, the issues that matter versus how far he is up in the polls, which is scant to 0?
Yeah, no, I think, look, it's a couple more factors in that. In other words, as you pointed out, he is ahead in immigration, which is a top 3 issue. He is slightly ahead in the economy and jobs, which is a number 1 issue, slightly ahead in inflation, which is a top 3 issue there. But Joe Biden has the benefit of an incumbency. And so the fact that Donald Trump is ahead now slightly, as you point out, and that's what our forecast is, 56% chance likely to win, basically a coin flip, that tells you that the incumbency is being outweighed by the issues. And look, 4 or 5
You say 56%, though. Yeah. They build casinos in Vegas, off of 56% odds. So
correct.
If you want to do that, that's where you're at. This is Donald Trump talking about how, and I think there's an argument to be made here, right, that every time the news gets out and the word gets out that there is a amnesty, there is a pass, there is a incentive then to come to America. Take a listen.
And that's what's happening. They hear about all of the things that are coming in. And don't kid yourself, the ones that are hurt the most, the black population, the Hispanic population, and you know what else? Who else is hurt badly? Unions, because unions are not able to compete with this.
All right. Kurt, how do Democrats get around the situation that's very real, that the things that play to the progressive base, which this does, and the activist base, does not play to working class voters that even of various demographic groups, blacks, Hispanics in particular, should be their voters.
Well, I think you have to look at the fact that we have seen now for multiple election cycles, Donald Trump Republicans go on the immigration is bad, they're taking your jobs, they're killing your women, they're criminals. And you know what? Despite the overwhelming polling lead that they have had on that issue and how Biden's been underwater, in the midterms we saw, it didn't matter. We've seen in special election after special election, it didn't matter. We have seen in swing states, it didn't matter because other issues are showing up at the polls, maybe not in polling, but at the polls and in the turnout that supersede immigration.
You're calling your buddy out on this. All right. Good to see you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As always. Boeing's CEO got grilled in the U.S. Senate why his testimony will do nothing to make flying safer. And Donald Trump rallies his troops just before the big debate. His new plan, we will tell you, to take on Joe Biden. Former President Trump is on the campaign trail in the crucial battleground state of Wisconsin, a state President Biden won by just 20,000 votes in 2020. Next week's debate, front and center for both candidates. And Trump today set up a little bit of a preview of how he thinks the debate's going to go.
Is anybody going to watch the debate? He's going to be so pumped up. He's going to be pumped up. You know all that stuff that was missing about a month ago from the White House? What happened? Who left it? Somebody left it there. I wonder, let's see, somebody left a laptop in an office of a gentleman who was supposed to fix the laptop from hell. He never picked it up, and somebody didn't pick up hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cocaine. I wonder who that could have been. I don't know. Actually, I think it was Joe.
Eric Erickson's here, host of the nationally syndicated Eric Erickson Show, author of the best conservative newsletter on the block, known as Show Notes. I see it every day. Eric, good to see you as always. Thank you. Congrats on the upcoming book.
Thank you.
Is Donald Trump setting the expectations too high for himself and too low for Joe Biden?
You know, it's funny you say that. I've been thinking about this, and I do think he probably needs to play up the fact that, well, you know, I've been tied up in court because of Joe Biden. He's had time to prep and elevate Biden. Historically, you know, incumbent presidents tend to not have a good first debate. They tend to excel at the second debate. I do think that Trump probably needs to be playing up Joe Biden and his ability to perform, and maybe he's going there with telling everybody how amped up he's going to be because of drugs or what have you, and really elevate Joe Biden's stamina for the stage.
All right, so debate rules, no interrupting is going to be enforced by muting one man's microphone, no help from aides during commercial breaks, no audience, no notes, 2 minutes to answer questions, 1 minute for rebuttals. Most importantly, 2 commercial breaks. All in all, this favors Joe Biden, does it not?
I think it does, and in fact, I think the Trump campaign has conceded as much, but they were still willing to go with it. The no notes, I think, helps Donald Trump, although that's pretty standard. No audience certainly helps Joe Biden. I do think, however, given Joe Biden sometimes wanders off thought and corrects himself, the 2 minute, 1 minute could work against him if Donald Trump plays it up right and suggests, well, no, the president should be able to finish his statement and see if Joe Biden continues meandering.
All right, fair enough. Carville, the guy who came up with "It's the Economy, Stupid," Bill Clinton's former advisor, floated this idea that Donald Trump would not show up. Take a listen.
You don't think Trump's coming next week?
I mean, I don't know. But if I was, I think he's going to wake up and say and decide. Just like he said he was going to testify at his defense of his trial. He even put on a defense. Let him show up. I wouldn't be shocked, but I certainly would not be surprised. If you gave me even money, I'd say he's a no-show.
I'd take that bet, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I absolutely would. Look, James is a friend, but there's no way that Donald Trump is not coming. Remember, they really didn't think that the Biden team would ultimately debate him. He wants to be on the debate stage with Joe Biden. And frankly, if I were advising Donald Trump, Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, they're friends of mine. They're going to ask him about January 6th. They're going to ask him about the stolen election. And I think every time Donald Trump needs to pivot and say, we're here to talk about how Joe Biden broke the economy. Did you rally a mob? Well, I tried to rally the stock market and Joe Biden broke it, and continue to pivot to the economy every chance he gets.
All right, so he's going to try to pivot to the economy, and Joe Biden's going to try to pivot back to January 6th, threats on democracy. Yeah. And then there's a question about whether or not Joe Biden will say convicted felon. And this is the new Biden ad on that.
In the courtroom, we see Donald Trump for who he is. He's been convicted of 34 felonies, found liable for sexual assault, and he committed financial fraud. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's been working, lowering health care costs and making big corporations pay their fair share. This election is between a convicted criminal who's only out for himself and a president who's fighting for your family.
Okay, so the question is, how does Donald Trump get a win? Joe Biden can get a win a lot of different ways. In fact, the expectations are low enough. He wins by just not having some terrible moment and getting through the 90 minutes. How does Donald Trump get a win?
Virtually every issue works in Donald Trump's favor, and so he needs to stick to the issues. The economy, immigration, the border, crime, those work to his favor. And I don't know that he can, because I think convicted felon is going to get under his skin. And Joe Biden is going to try very hard to bait Donald Trump about being a convicted felon, about democracy under attack, about January 6th. And Trump doesn't have the impulse control or discipline. And the Democrats know that. So if Trump can just continue to bring it back to inflation and the border, he can have a solid night.
Solid, I get. But you've got a couple of ifs in there, right? The if he can stay on topic, if he cannot get distracted, if he cannot get goaded, if. And that just gets him to a solid night. When this debate got announced, we said, look, the one thing that Joe Biden could do to totally steal the night, right, is to say, you're a convicted felon, you got convicted by a jury of your peers, you've gotten indicted, but I'm pardoning you, and I'm having Kathy Hochul pardon you, because the America needs to vote on this and decide it that way. And we're moving on from here. And Joe Biden would win the night. He wouldn't lose a single vote. Is there anything Donald Trump can do that's that kind of pivotal, game-changing moment?
There's not. I mean, and that's part of the power of the incumbency that Joe Biden has. In a very close race, incumbency matters. And incumbency matters in things like that. Donald Trump's not playing from the high ground here. Joe Biden is. But unfortunately for Joe Biden, he is surrounded by every issue working against him. The only thing the polling suggests that's working for Joe Biden is the convicted felon line, and he can leverage that pretty powerfully.
Yeah, the irony, right, is the only thing that is working for Joe Biden is Donald Trump.
Yes, that's exactly it. Every issue is working to Donald Trump's favor. This really is one of the wildest presidential seasons. Every single issue tends to work for Donald Trump right now, but the character issue works for Joe Biden. He's got to be able to leverage that, and so Trump has to stay on the issues message to be able to win a night.
Something, and you were a political operative at one point, so you can speak to this. The one thing that I keep seeing is Democrats talk about their ground game, which is massive. The amount of money being spent, the organization, it's an old-fashioned ground game. And all the Trump people do is talk about the size of the rallies, and it's impressive. A lot of people show up, and if you show up to a rally, you're going to show up and vote. Is that enough, though, come Election Day?
No, it's not. In fact, that's my big thing, and I talk about this on my radio show often, is that as a political operative, I used to design ground games for candidates, and I don't see that happening with the GOP. They lack the money, they lack the resources, and frankly, they really do lack the people who understand at a local level that they can't just show up at rallies. Some of the people showing up at rallies are there for the curiosity aspect. I mean, keep in mind in 2020, Joe Biden's team was knocking on doors across Georgia while Trump's team was doing boat flotillas. And, knocking on doors and getting people to fill out absentee ballots mattered more than a boat flotilla.
That's a good point. If everybody was in who was in the boat flotilla was out knocking doors instead, which isn't nearly as much fun as being in a boat flotilla of any type, that things would change. Great point.
Yeah,
all right, Eric,
you
as always,
gotta mobilize the vote.
Yeah, you've got to mobilize it, and you've got to get sort of the low intensity voters is what they call them. All right, Eric, thank you. Thoughtful and poignant as always. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, Boeing CEO got grilled on Capitol Hill today. Well, all of these senators bloviating won't make air travel safer, but it might make it more expensive.
It's a lot of it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. But meanwhile, you're getting paid a heck of a lot of money. It's unbelievable. If anybody's coming out of this deal good, it's you.
I hope you have a good day or had a good day. And if you didn't have a good day, I can assure you the Boeing CEO had a worse day, more uncomfortable day, although he got paid awfully well to do it. He headed to Capitol Hill for a scolding by members of Congress.
What systemic failures allowed Boeing to not only purchase questionable titanium, but to fail to recognize that it was substandard once you had it in your possession and to install it in an aircraft? How'd that happen?
Have you directly spoken to any of the whistleblowers?
I have not directly spoken to any of the whistleblowers.
Do you think that'd be a good idea to do that?
But meanwhile, you're getting paid a heck of a lot of money. It's unbelievable. If anybody's coming out of this deal good, it's you. Why haven't you resigned?
Why haven't you resigned? Okay, because, well, the CEO of Boeing makes an awful lot of money. The senators were right about that. And they love to hear themselves talk, but this will do absolutely nothing to make flying safer. And here's why. Dave Calhoun, the guy who they were talking to, was supposed to fix Boeing. He's going to leave the company soon with a $62 million payout. The guy before him, who got fired for the 737 MAX disaster, also got a $62 million payout to leave. Hundreds of people died because of those men's arrogance. People lost their jobs. On camera, airplanes didn't get delivered. I think on camera was supposed to not be in the teleprompter, but it's amazing. I'll read almost anything that is in the teleprompter. There you go. This is the big issue in terms of what happened and where this is going. The CEOs of Boeing destroyed one of the great names in American business. They cared about everything but safety in building good airplanes. They destroyed Boeing, and they get tens of millions of dollars. Another man who wants millions for him and his clients, too, is aviation attorney and pilot Timothy Loranger. He represents 7 passengers on Alaska Airlines Flight 1282. That's the one where the door plug blew out mid-flight so people could look down and see the ground below them. And Timothy is with us now. Counselor, good to see you.
Thank you so much.
What did you think was the most important part of the hearing today?
Well, what came from that hearing is a lot of, actually, the best part. It's hard to find the best part. What came from the hearing is a lot of talk about the difference between manufacturing defects and safety issues that they're having at Boeing in their manufacturing process. A lot of sidestepping of very important questions, very uncomfortable witnesses there with Mr. Calhoun certainly was feeling the heat there.
All right, well, and with good reason, right? I mean, you think about Boeing's incidents, door plugs blowing off, the wheels fall off, there's a couple of nosedives, there was the Southwest engine cover, there was the Southwest engine that blew apart, there was the Ethiopian crash, 737 MAX, there was the 2018 Indonesian crash, 737 MAX, and a number of engine fires. Your lawsuits are going to get money for the people who were on the Alaskan Airlines flight, or that's the idea, from Boeing, maybe from the airlines too. How's that going to make flying safer?
Well, a lawsuit has more than one purpose. Certainly, getting compensation for people who've been injured is a very important factor. That is some motivation to file a lawsuit. But also, litigation does a good job of looking very deeply into the processes that occurred, and finding out what went wrong along the way. Why was this door, how was this door not installed properly? How is it that those documents that would have shown how the door was installed, how are they lost? How was video lost? All of those things, when they come to light, they tend to push toward safety in the manufacturing process. So litigation.
Okay, I get that safety in the manufacturing process is an important thing, but unless you hold these CEOs responsible and start taking their money, which you're not going to do, all that's going to happen is Boeing's going to pay you, Alaskan Airlines is going to pay you, and they're going to raise all of our ticket prices, right?
Certainly, Boeing is going to suffer financially from all of these mistakes, but absolutely these issues coming into the light through litigation, through public documents that are filed in the court system that are available to the FAA, to the government, will put pressure on Boeing to make changes. And just because the CEOs come in and then they decide to leave when the hot seat gets...
I get all this, and I get there's a reason for litigation. The FAA could get these documents without a lawsuit, so could Congress, okay? They don't need your lawsuit in order to do this. And what I'm getting at is you've got people who are on the Alaskan Airlines flight. I'm sure it was scary. I'm sure it was terrifying. Pilot myself, and you know what things are like in emergency situations. Terrifying for passengers. But it feels a little bit like these folks now have a lottery ticket that you're cashing in for them. And in the end, Boeing's going to get hurt financially. Alaskan Airlines is going to get hurt financially. They're going to pass the costs all on to us. Where do I have that wrong?
You don't necessarily have that wrong, but that is unfortunately the price when you put people's lives in jeopardy. Yeah. That's, if they get the blowback from the flying public who is going to decide to make choices about what airlines they fly on and what aircraft that they're willing to get on, Boeing is going to start to feel it in the bottom line. That also includes issues with their stock prices. The more they get hit, the more they lose in their bottom line. I think that's an appropriate pressure to put on them through litigation. That's what our civil justice system does. And I, of course, stand behind it. I stand behind my clients who are seeking compensation for what they went through.
I understand that. Just to be clear, though, none of the money is going to come from either Dennis Muhlenberger or Dave Calhoun, right? The guys who actually got us here, they're not going to pay a dime, right? They're going to keep their golden parachutes?
They're going to keep their golden parachutes. Unfortunately, they will walk away very wealthy and not really feel the pressure of any of this. But the people who are back at Boeing, the people who are working there, the shareholders, and the flying public, they're the ones who are going to pay the price for this. And then hopefully at the end of the day, Boeing will fix some of the issues that they have. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have a lot of confidence in the promises that they've made.
Yeah, I think that's probably a very fair point. Timothy, among other things, pilot, lawyer, and honest broker of information. We'd be happy to have you back anytime, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Vladimir Putin, there he is. He landed in North Korea today, hopped off his plane. The Russian strongman went to meet with Kim Jong-un and likely get more cheap North Korean artillery shells and ammunition for his war in Ukraine. He looks pretty spry there heading down the stairs. And there's Kim Jong-un waiting to meet him. In return, Kim will get some Russian missile technology, maybe some nuclear secrets, who knows. North Korea is back testing intercontinental ballistic missiles these days. It stopped for a while. That was back in 2018 and 2019. Trump's summits with Kim Jong-un gave the North Korean leader enough hope he stopped acting out. More importantly for our purposes, Kim Jong-un moved away from Russia and China. Now he's back taking orders from his buddy, Vladimir. No matter what you think of Donald Trump's foreign policy, and there's a lot of critiques, Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un reunited is bad for America. We wrote about this first in War Notes. That is our daily newsletter with our thoughts on the most important stories of the day. It started at the beginning of the Israel-Gaza war. You can go to warnotes.com to subscribe for free. It started as our internal newsletter. Now you get to be part of the conversation and reply. We'll read some of your responses a little later this week and also see you on social media at Leland Vittert on Instagram and Twitter. Singing sensation and entertainer Justin Timberlake. I got him confused with Justin Bieber. Who knew? But he got busted for driving while intoxicated. Here's his mugshot. He joins a list of dozens of other celebrities who won't take Uber. Yeah, there they all are. Why they will never learn. Comes with it. Here he is. His company includes, but is not limited to, Tiger Woods, Sally Struthers, Rip Torn, Rick Springfield, Paris Hilton, Nicole Richie, Nick Nolte, Mike Tyson, Mel Gibson, Lindsay Lohan, Justin Bieber, Heather Locklear, Gary Collins, Drake Bell, David Cassidy, Charles Barkley, and I'm sure we are forgetting a few. Cops arrested the Cry Me a River singer, that's the name of the song, last night, saying, quote, his eyes were bloodshot and glassy. A strong odor of alcoholic beverage was emanating from his breath. He was unable to divide attention. He had slowed speech. He was unsteady of foot, and he performed poorly on all standardized field sobriety tests. He's now charged with 1 count of driving while intoxicated and swerving lanes, not stopping at a stop sign. He's also not stopping the Forget Tomorrow World Tour with stops in Chicago and New York the coming weeks. The Daily Mail's U.S. Associate Editor, entertainment correspondent, Charlie Langston is here. Hello. Evidently, he told the cop, or reportedly, I should say, he told the cop, this is going to screw up the tour, right?
Supposedly, but then he also told the cop that he'd only had 1 martini. So I'm not sure that the conversations there were exactly true.
Yeah, if you look at the picture, I mean, maybe it was 1 very large martini. I guess it just all depends on how big the glass is. You cover celebrities. I don't. I'm trying to understand this because what we all talked about on our editorial call. This guy has more than enough money for a personal chauffeur day in and day out, much less enough money to take Uber. Why don't they?
You know, I think it's for a number of reasons. First and foremost, you have to keep in mind that so many celebrities are incredibly far removed from normal life. To them, they don't understand the basics of wrong and right because they have so many people telling them what to do, organizing their lives for them, cooking for them. So when it comes to making very basic decisions, that skill just isn't the same as, you know, one that you or I might have. Similarly, celebrities see real life as something of a novelty. So driving themselves around, even when it's in a luxury Hamptons enclave, even when it's in a very expensive BMW, they still see that as being some kind of novelty thing that they get to do on their days off. And I think all of that really ties in here. Justin went for a night out with his friends. He was having what he might see as a normal evening on the town. And as a result, he wanted to stay normal and drive himself home like any other person might be able to do.
Fascinating, right? They have so much more to lose and they're willing to risk it by, I guess, as you said, trying to have a novelty. So this is the picture from you guys of him being walked out in handcuffs that the Daily Mail got. Thanks for letting us use it. What do you see here, and what happens to Justin Bieber now? Not Justin Bieber, sorry, Justin Timberlake. I get the two confused. It happens to the best of us. Tell me what happens to Justin Timberlake now that he's being booked, charged, and now, like anybody else in New York, with a charge.
Well, first and foremost, he has had his driving privileges in the state of New York suspended for a year because he refused to take a breathalyzer test when the cops pulled him over. He's now going to have to return to court on July 26th in order to face those charges that you mentioned earlier. Now, he does have upcoming court dates. He's due in Chicago. Tour dates. There we go. We're both getting confused. On Friday and Saturday. And he's then due to come back to New York the following week. But really, I think the biggest ramifications for Justin are going to be at home with his wife, Jessica Biel, who's currently trying to work very hard on a new TV project. And quite frankly, doesn't need her husband's scandals being splashed across the world's media.
Well, nobody ever wants their husband's scandal splashed across the world's media. Is there, and I'm trying to figure out what it is about the human nature, that you hear about a celebrity getting a DUI, and is it a gloating? Is it a sense of sneering? What's the emotion that's happening in everybody when they hear about this, that we all revel in?
I think it's a mix. First and foremost, I think it's just sheer fascination. Seeing celebrities face normal ramifications for their actions is quite a rare thing in this day and age. Ordinarily, we're used to celebrities not being very much like us. If they go to a grocery store, it's a grocery store where the ice cubes cost $40. If they go on vacation, it's on a private jet to a private island. So I think the mere fact that someone of Justin's celebrity status could face these kinds of consequences is fascinating. And then on top of that, you have the mix of people who've idolized him for years, who are devastated to see what looks like it might be a bit of an awkward spiral that he's going through. And then on top of that, you just have sheer fascination with celebrity culture. And I think anytime a celebrity gets arrested, there's always going to be a little bit of smugness among us ordinary people to see them really kind of take that
brought
hit.
down to life or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't feel good for some reason to revel in it. And it doesn't, for some reason, I don't know, maybe I'm old-fashioned or something. But you see the car drive by, the surveillance video of him driving, and I didn't see him swerve or anything like that. And obviously, he's entitled to what everybody else is, the presumption of innocence. And then at some point, if he chooses to fight the charges, then we'll have a trial and go from there. All of that said, I think you picked up on something really interesting, which is the celebrities of the 1960s and 1970s never had to worry about this stuff, right? Because if they were driving in Hollywood and got pulled over, they got driven home by the cops. In a way, we sort of moved to a much more, egalitarian situation in society?
Well, I think the fascinating thing here is that one of the arresting officers is actually understood to have been so young that he did not know who Justin Timberlake was. One of Justin's friends said to the arresting officers, look, cut him some slack, go easy on him. He's having, a busy time, whatever it is. And the police officer said no, because he didn't realize who Justin was. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not laboring under the illusion that celebrities still don't get away with naughty deeds because of who they are. But in this instance, it just goes to show that if you are too old to be known by the person arresting you, that celebrity status is not going to get you very far.
The words of the night, naughty deeds. There you go. Thank you. It was great having you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. After everything she went through, you'll remember this name, Elizabeth Smart. She never once played the victim card. It's been really impressive how she has handled her life, how she went from hostage to now TV host. We'll see you in a minute.
I ever fully lost hope, but there were some pretty low times. I mean, I was raped daily, often multiple times. I mean, I was withheld food. I was withheld, water was withheld from me. There were a lot of times that I really wondered if I would just die naturally.
That was Elizabeth Smart. Remember her? She opened up about her survival story. She guest hosted Ashley Banfield's show last night here on NewsNation to talk about her experience of being kidnapped at the age of 14 back in 2002 and then rescued by a police officer in Utah. And Elizabeth is with us ahead of hosting Banfield again tonight. First of all, congratulations. One night down, one to go.
Thank you.
What about your experiences, and I've said to you, I know before, but I'll say it on air, how admiring I am of you being a survivor and not a victim after your experience. What about your experiences did you bring last night that you thought were most important?
I felt there were actually quite a few instances in the stories last night that I felt some form of connection, just given what I've experienced to what the guests were sharing they experienced last night. And I mean, yes, a lot of the stories were focused on victims of crimes, victims of kidnapping. And I mean, I have known some of them personally. So it was a pretty awesome night last night.
Yeah, it was. Congratulations. I can only imagine sort of the 6 months that you were in captivity, how that formed your view of the human equation. And the empathy it gives you and the understanding. Tonight, I know you have on a couple of NYPD officers who were able to talk a young man jumping off the Washington Bridge, GW Bridge in New York. We'll listen to a little bit of the body cam tape. Take a listen.
We're here. You know what's funny? Two people flagged us down for you. It means people care out there. People care. I care. I'm not going to judge anything in the past. I'm not going to judge who you are. The only thing I want to make sure is that you're okay and that you go home at the end of the day.
Yeah, I know that sort of thinking about life in that way is something you struggled with in captivity. And I also think to myself about your view of police officers after one spotted you and was able to save you.
I'm so grateful for law enforcement who do their work diligently, who are actively trying their best to make a difference. And I think it's really exciting to be able to sit down with some of them tonight and listen to their experience, but also acknowledge the amazing work that they're doing.
I'm going to ask you real quick. Have you ever interviewed the police officer who saved you, who rescued you?
I have never interviewed them, no.
All right, we're setting that up. That would be absolutely incredible. We're going to try to do that. Elizabeth, congratulations. Night 2 coming up, hosting Banfield at 10 p.m. Eastern right here on NewsNation. We'll see you soon, all right?
Okay.
Thank you. We have an update on our discussion last night with Bill O'Reilly. He's the original king of cable news, and he said NBC Nightly News didn't cover the arrest of 8 illegal immigrants a couple of weeks ago with ISIS connections.
Last Wednesday, and you reported it, 8 migrants from Tajikistan were caught by the FBI and Homeland Security and linked to ISIS. They came across the southern border. Do you realize, Leland, you reported it, I reported on No Spin News. NBC Nightly News, ABC Nightly News, CBS Nightly News didn't mention it.
We mentioned to Bill in real time that Lester Holt did do a segment about it. There it is. Bill said he had his team check. Told you we would tell you what happened. And O'Reilly's team, when they went back, they checked the wrong day to see if it had been covered. Today, Bill addressed the issue.
The problem was that my production team, and that includes me, had the wrong day. So we went into the lineups of the news organizations, all the networks and the cables, and we were looking at the wrong day. So I reported misinformation. And there's a lot of blame to go around, but it's mostly my fault.
He ended up by saying the buck stops with him, the old Harry Truman line. These days, very few people will ever say I was wrong or I'm sorry. Politicians never will, obviously. Pundits on cable TV don't. They think it shows some sort of weakness. They never back down. There's a reason Bill O'Reilly still holds the record for the most viewers on cable news. People trust him. They don't trust him because he's always right. Nobody is always right. But because he's willing to admit when he is wrong. And that is a real strength. Bill will be back on Monday with us. In the meantime, Chris Cuomo on from New York. I'll see you tomorrow night.